In the last video, we started talking about the importance of evaluating market efficiency. We are making a pretty big transition at this point in the course in talking about market efficiency. And so it is important for you to focus your attention on how our analysis is changing. If you don't understand this transition, the confusion can carry over for much of the rest of the course. Here is the big picture. Until now, we have been trying to figure out what will happen in a market. In other words, when people operate in a market, what will they do? In trying to understand how people behave in markets, we have used the basic market equilibrium model, which I have shown a picture of over here. In that model, we have demand, shown here, and a supply, also shown here. And we have the market equilibrium quantity, Q star, and the market equilibrium price, P star. We also have predictions about who will buy the goods. So we know these folks up here, these guys are buyers. They're the ones who are willing to pay the purchase price P star. And we know who will sell the product, and those are these folks. These are the sellers. But now we want to evaluate these market outcomes. We need to figure out whether or not these outcomes are good for our society. And we will measure economic performance using the concept of economic efficiency. We have touched on efficiency in some of our earlier videos, but so far it has been just a buzzword. In this module, we're going to systematically evaluate the efficiency of markets. So what is different between predicting market outcomes and evaluating efficiency? A good analogy is to think about building a car. To build a car, you need scientists and engineers to tell you how to design and assemble the car. This task is heavy on science and engineering. Once the car is built, however, one might ask a separate question, which is, I wonder if that's a good car. The science used to build the car is not helpful at this point. Instead, you need specific criteria to evaluate car quality. For example, some people might care about power and speed, and others might care about fuel economy, reliability, and safety. The important thing to notice is that evaluating car quality is a very different problem from the engineering task of building the car in the first place. We are similarly switching gears from explaining how markets work to examining how well they work. To do so, we're going to use economic efficiency. Economic efficiency rests on three principles, which are going to include consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus. Now, you don't have any idea what those terms mean at this point. I'm just acquainting you with them so you kind of have a roadmap of where we're headed in future videos. In examining these types of surplus, we will use demand and supply curves, just like we have here, but we will be using them in a new way. You can see in the diagram how we use demand and supply to determine market equilibrium and price. Now we want to use those same curves to evaluate consumer and producer and total surplus and economic efficiency. I will show you in later videos how to use demand curves to make those determinations. We will then use these measures of surplus to determine how well competitive markets work. These tools will enable you to evaluate the impact of markets on consumers and producers and society as a whole. When we have finished, you will be able to determine how well a market is working. These skills will permit you to evaluate what happens when the government interferes in markets and market outcomes. For example, the tools will enable you to evaluate diverse policies, including that we touched upon in the last video, including minimum wages, pollution control, government subsidies to education and student loans, and many others. So these tools are very important in helping you understand how well markets work and the consequences of governmental intervention.